Hi everybody, and welcome back to Teachers Talk Money, where I help teachers master their money in order to give back to themselves. Today I'm going to be talking about why on earth I live in an extremely high cost of living area as somebody who's pursuing FIRE and is on a teacher salary. And I'm going to be sharing my tips with you in case you are also interested in living or already living in a high cost of living area. So a little bit of background, about 2 years ago, after I finished my first year teaching and I paid off all of my student loan debt, I decided to move from a cheaper suburban area where I was living with 2 roommates to Washington, D.C., which is much more expensive, and I live here now with my partner, Brian. This meant that my rent increased by over $300 a month, and many of my other just general living costs, such as food and things like that, went up as well. You're probably thinking that I could do a lot with an extra $300 per month, and you are completely right. And I play that game with myself too sometimes by inputting an extra $300 into what I'm already investing for my future, seeing how much quicker I could reach early retirement, and realizing how much I could do with my month-to-month budget with that extra cash flow. And a lot of people who are pursuing FIRE will tell you to lower your rent as much as possible. And it's valid advice if that's something that's worthwhile to you. But for me, my goal is to balance my future goals with my actual life now, because there's really no point in making sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice to get to some theoretical end goal when it is just as valid to be investing in yourself here and now today. Reaching financial independence early would be amazing, but if I spent my path getting there completely just cutting corners at all costs, I don't think I would be actually that satisfied when I finally achieved it, nor would I really know what to do or how to spend my money. I don't want to have any regrets, and I don't want to make sacrifices that are too big. And one of those things that is really important to me is living in a city, and specifically living in the area that I live in. So let's go over all the reasons why this is a very worthwhile monthly expense to me. The number one thing is that I have access to everything I need around this area. I absolutely love walking. It is one of my favorite forms of exercise, and so for everything that I need to be walkable around me is so crucial. One of those things is just amazing food. I'm a huge foodie, and DC is a wonderful city for the local food scene. It's a beautiful conglomerate of all different foods from different cultures and of different price ranges, and many of those are walkable or easily accessible to me via driving or metro. But it's also important to me to be around a lot of cultural events. Last year specifically, given the fact that when we were quarantining, I could just go outside and protest right outside my front door or walk down to the White House, it was incredible to feel at the center of it all and involved in the political things that were going on. And I really can't place a price on that. I remember when Biden won the presidency, me and my friends went out to the park near my house to celebrate, and we walked down to the White House later that day, and it was just so cool. So not only to be involved in the protests and fighting for justice, but in the celebrations that happen when we make some small steps. And I have to admit that before last year, I had never been to a single protest in my life, even living driving distance from the city pretty much my entire life. Especially as a busy first year teacher or a busy college student, there just always seemed to be stuff in the way, and then transportation on top of that just made it so that was not really my primary form of activism at all. And I still wouldn't say that it's my primary form, but it's wonderful to be able to join in and protest, be a part of the social movements, and help out in the community that I'm living in. Obviously, you do not have to live in the nation's capital to protest or to be a part of democracy in any way, but it is just such a benefit for me personally to sort of expand my social justice. And of course, there are also many other cultural events like the Cherry Blossom Festival or the festivals for different neighborhoods that go on all the time, and it's just absolutely wonderful to have that accessible to me. Then of course there's museums, monuments, and parks, and many of these are free or cheap to do, and some of my favorite stuff to go and see. And there's also great nightlife in the city. As a young person, this is pretty important to me. I'm not sure where the world will be when this video comes out. Right now, It is not safe to go to bars or restaurants as I'm filming this a couple months ahead of time. But before quarantine, being able to walk to some of my favorite bars and clubs was really awesome because I wasn't racking up all the money in Ubers that I probably would have spent otherwise were I going out when I lived in the suburbs or back in college. And finally, and most importantly, I am very closely accessible and able to access many of my close friends. I live walking distance or very short driving distance from a ton of my close friends here in the city, and that is extremely important to me because DC is where my people are, it is where I want to be. But beyond the access and the logistics of living in the city, I also just really like the vibe of cities, which sounds a little bit silly, but I really love having ambient people around. I love a fast-paced environment as a type A East Coast person. In DC specifically, there is so much history and culture and beauty all around, and all you have to do is take a walk to see it. It's completely free. So I truly may not live in DC forever. There may come a time where I want to cut costs, or I move to a different state entirely or a different country entirely, or maybe it will be a purely financial move and I will decide that saving and investing that money is more worthwhile than living here where I have access to many of the important things in my life. But for now, I am staying, and I am happy to be here and happy to pay that extra money every month to be where I want to be. Now, let's get into all of my tips for living in a high cost of living area. First, if you right now do not live in a high cost of living area, but you are interested in moving to one, my advice to you is to set a financial goal to meet before you make that move. In my case, I knew I wanted to be debt-free before I moved to the city because I knew as soon as my rent went up, I would have way less cash to throw towards my student loans. That is definitely not realistic for everyone, so maybe your goal is something else. Maybe it's just that you want to get out of consumer debt first, or maybe you want to have your emergency fund built up first, which I definitely recommend. Whatever it is, having something in mind that will make your transition easier because you've freed up some monthly cash flow is super, super important. My second tip is that planning trumps frugality every time. Don't just move to the city without a budget and think that if you cut costs as much as possible, you'll be okay. Make sure that you are still keeping a budget month to month and planning for your future long term. If you do this, you'll be able to have the permission to spend on the things that are important to you, and you won't have to feel like you're cutting costs at every turn. I know that sounds a little bit difficult or counterintuitive, but I can confidently say, as somebody on a teacher's salary, I'm able to make the high rent happen, I am able to make the other high costs happen because I plan for them month to month, and I'm still on track to retire early, even on a teacher's salary. And I truly, truly believe not only is this due to working hard and getting out of debt and making sacrifices initially, but it is now mostly just due to the fact that I keep a monthly budget. I also encourage anyone, even if you're already living in a high cost of living area or if you're planning to move to one, to consider location as much as possible for your next move. And the best location, in my opinion, is where you're going to need the least amount of Ubers. Be walkable as much as possible. I don't spend money on Ubers hardly ever anymore, even after living in the city for 2 years, because I chose a location that was walking distance from a few of my favorite neighborhoods. And it isn't just Ubers, it's also parking fees at places, it's also the cost of metro rides. So just really consider where you'll be able to have the most walkable or bikeable, if that's your thing, access without having to pay for ride shares, unexpected parking fees, and possibly even the metro, although the metro is an affordable option. And my fourth and final tip for living in a high cost of living area is keep a list of your favorite free and cheap activities. So if you're running out of money in your budget month to month, or if you just want something to do without spending a ton of money, you have that list to refer to, and you can go and do those activities on the weekends or whenever it is that you want to do something great for free or cheap. So that is my reasoning of why I live in a high cost living area and my best tips that have really helped me along this journey. Once again, I don't know that I'll be here forever, but for now it is more than worthwhile to me. And I encourage everyone to question the people who say you have to decrease your rent as much as possible, decrease your living costs as much as possible in order to reach FIRE earlier. It's good advice and it's true and it's absolutely not wrong. I would definitely reach financial independence earlier if I were investing that difference in rent. However, the goal of my life is not just to reach financial independence and be able to retire from traditional work early. The goal of my life is to enjoy it, and that is also what my money is a tool for. Enjoying my life now and preparing to enjoy my life in the future. And therefore, it's not really worth it to me to sacrifice some of the most important things just to reach that goal. So it's all about balancing your life now and your future life. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please, please, please like this, comment, subscribe, all of those good things. I can't tell you how much it means to me and how much it helps my channel grow. Have an amazing week, you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.